There's a little bit of controversy in London recently when a video of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau surfaced showing the PM singing a Queen classic, Bohemian Rhapsody, by a piano at a London hotel. Now, a number of Canadians were outraged, saying that was neither the time nor the place, since Canada is in a 10-day period of mourning in honour of the late Queen Elizabeth II. While others say, you know, it really wasn't that big of a deal. You can include political reporter and Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilley in the latter group. Now, Brian joins us now from Toronto. Brian, you say there was nothing really wrong with Trudeau singing a little Bohemian Rhapsody?
Look, for all the things that we have to be upset at Justin Trudeau over, and the list is very long, this is low on the scale. And when you compare it to other trips, think of the trip to India, think of other gaffes that he's done on foreign trips. I'm not overly bothered by this. He was in the hotel that he was staying at. He was with the Canadian delegation. Somebody started playing the piano. Now, different people have different ways of mourning, and some people believe that you've got to be in a solemn state for the entire time. When you're traveling, the hotel is essentially your home. And so, yeah, he's in the hotel lobby with the Canadian delegation. Gregory Charles, a well-known Canadian pianist, a musician who's the member of the Order of Canada. That's part of why he was invited on the delegation, started playing the piano, and people started singing along. I've got bigger fish to fry with Justin Trudeau than whether he can sing Bohemian Rhapsody on key or off key, whether it was appropriate or not. But, I also do come from a tradition where at funerals, there is singing, there are storytelling, there's people remembering your life. There's a lot of things going on. It's not just a somber, solemn occasion where you sit in sackcloth and ash for a week or two to be able to get through this. So I'm not bothered by this. If I'm going to be bothered by Justin Trudeau, there's a long list of other things that we can talk about. We probably will in the next few minutes on why we should be upset with him and his government. This falls to the bottom of the list. I get people were upset. I'm just not going to be overly upset about it.
Now, Brian, actually, another issue Canadians are quite upset about is inflation, which is hovering around 7% right now. It's down slightly, but still a staggering figure. What does Stats Can say is the driving force behind the high cost of living right now?
Well, the reason that it's down to 7%, I mean, think about that, Hal. We're saying inflation's down to 7%. That's an outrageous number. And the reason that it's down is that gasoline is down. But let me just bring up on my computer here some of the figures that we can talk about. Food growth, food price growth remained broad-based, they said. It's one of the biggest issues. So year-over-year basis, Canadians paid 6.5% more for meat than they did a year ago. Now, that's just part of the story. So 6.5% for meat, just part of the story, because by September of last year, inflation was already taking off. For dairy products, food prices up 7%, bakery products 15.4, fresh fruit 13.2, non-alcoholic beverages 14.1, fish and seafood 8.7. You want to bake at home, sugar and other confectionery products, we're talking up more than 13%. So all of this to say that it doesn't matter how you're trying to feed your family, what you're trying to do, things are costing more. And this is one of the reasons that I say, forget about Bohemian Rhapsody. I'm angry about inflation. I'm angry about a million other things. The Trudeau government has done nothing to bring down inflation. They've left it all to the Bank of Canada, which will hike interest rates, which hurts homeowners with mortgages. It hurts individuals, families, businesses with lines of credit. It hurts so many people to continually raise interest rates. Now, does it have to be done? Yeah, it's one of the key ways that we can address inflation, but it's not the only thing to be done. The government could be cutting spending. They could be doing their part to lower the pressure that is driving up inflation, and instead they're not doing it. This is a failure on his part. And again, one of the reasons that I'm upset at him over this, I'm very upset at him over this, rather than worrying about whether he's singing Bohemian Rhapsody off key in a London hotel.
You know, what's ironic, Brian, one of the lines from the song Bohemian Rhapsody is, he's a poor boy from a poor family. Trudeau singing about that. Many people look at him as a Laurentian elite, and we're the ones right now suffering through inflation, and a lot of families are hurting here in Canada. Brian, the Canadian Taxpayers Federation says the Trudeau Liberals have a serious spending problem. Our debt is now over $1 trillion, but Ottawa is offering new spending. Would that not boost inflation yet again?
Well, the way that they're promising to tackle inflation would boost inflation. Now, let me be clear. If you're at the lowest end of the economic ladder, you're probably not going to care all that much, because the Trudeau government is saying we'll give you a $500 uh, payment to help with rent if you're low income and you pay more than 30% of rent. Well, okay, well, only a portion of people in that situation are going to do that because many of them won't have filled out their tax forms for the last year. You've got a doubling of the GST tax credit for 6 months. These are very short term measures that will boost inflationary pressure because you're putting money into the pockets of people who are going to spend it the fastest. That's one way to boost inflation. The government always says when the economy is shrinking, put money in the hands of people who will spend it the fastest, meaning people at the lowest end of the economic spectrum. Oh, okay, so if that's how you boost the economy when things are slowing down, why are you doing that when things are so hot that we've got to take measures to cool down the economy? It's because it's the only thing you know how to do, or politically it works for you. So again, if you're having trouble paying for rent, paying for groceries, you're going to look at these things and say, okay, well, they're doing something for me. It's not going to help most average families, most middle class families, but it will keep boosting the inflationary pressure. And then in 6 months, Hal, these things are just going to disappear. They're going to be done away with. And the inflationary pressure will still be there. In fact, it might be worse due to the government action. They've been warned by all kinds of economists, all kinds of top banks, the experts that they say that they want to rely on for solid public policy, that this is the wrong move. They're still going ahead with it. Why? It's political. It's not about doing what will work. It's doing what they think will give them the most political bang for the buck.
U.S. President Joe Biden was seen on 60 Minutes recently saying the pandemic is over. Now, it appears as though our federal government may be in agreement, Brian. There's word that the ArriveCAN app may soon become optional and that COVID-19 travel restrictions could soon be gone.
Oh, I don't expect to ever hear the Trudeau government say the pandemic is over. Not in any near or medium term future do I expect to hear that. But what we are hearing is that they will make ArriveCAN optional, that they will end the vaccination requirement for people entering the country. Now, remember, there used to be a requirement to travel inside Canada by plane, train, or boat. As long as it went between provinces, that you had to be vaccinated. They did away with that in June. There has not been a wide outbreak of COVID-19 because of that. And so they're looking at dropping the vaccination requirement for incoming international travelers. They're also looking at dropping the mandatory random testing, the offsite testing. So you fly into the country, you could be picked at random, Hal, when you land at Calgary International Airport, and they say, Hal, you got to do a day 2 and a day 8 COVID test to see if you're bringing it into the country. They're going to do away with that, I'm told, by September 30th. That's when the Ordering Council, which is the legal framework that requires these measures to be in place, that's when that will lapse, and they're not going to renew it. At this point, given all the reporting on this by myself, by others, I'd be shocked if this didn't happen. Masking on flights is something that is still up for debate. And what I'm told is that Health Minister Jean-Yves Duclos has been adamant that masking remain in place. It's an argument around the cabinet table. We'll see where the government lands when this finally comes through. He'd like it to stay in until after Thanksgiving, see if there's a bump in COVID transmission due to Thanksgiving travel. As much as a lot of Canadians travel at Thanksgiving, it's not like the US where it's the busiest travel day of the year. It is a much smaller, significant, but much smaller travel increase.
A couple of new polls came out which shows the federal Conservatives have a significant lead over the Trudeau Liberals. Brian, let me ask you, is this the Pierre Poilievre effect?
I mean, it very well could be. Abacus says that this is the third poll in a row they've done with a significant lead for the Conservatives. Leger, the last poll that I was able to find was from August 7th. And at that point, going off memory, I believe it was 33% for the Liberals back then and 28% for the Conservatives. Now it's 34% for the Conservatives, 28% for the Liberals. If you're in Pierre Poilievre's campaign or in his OLO now, the opposition leader's office, you're pumping your fist in the air and running around doing victory laps over this and over the Arrive can, the possibility that Arrive can will disappear, and you're going to say that this is a good thing. That same Leger poll that had them up 6 points said that Justin Trudeau is still the preferred prime minister, but that's by like 24% say Trudeau's the preferred prime minister, 21% say Poilievre. People aren't sold on the leaders yet, but there's definitely more interest in the Conservatives than the Liberals at this point. Now, 34% will not get the Conservatives a majority government. But when you've got a 6-point gap like that, let's say that Leger poll was the most accurate and there was an election held today, what would that look like? Well, we know that a lot of that support would be from Western Canada, a decent amount in Ontario, less so in Quebec and Atlantic. It would probably mean a Conservative minority. At 34%, no party is in majority territory. They've lost the last two elections with about 34% support. But the Liberals shrinking down to 28%, that is significant. The Trudeau Liberals are in trouble right now. And these two polls, including the one from Abacus, which is, a firm with a lot of connections to Trudeau, at least one of their executives has a lot of connections to Trudeau and the Liberal Party. That's, you can't say this is nothing. That's something significant going on that the public and the political class should pay attention to.
Brian, Trudeau must go was trending on Twitter once again with over 500,000 tweets. I mean, sure, some of those were bots, but the majority of Canadians I saw appeared very frustrated with the federal government. What do you think is really driving this?
I think it's regular people. I've heard the claim of bots, and Jerry Butts has said that. I'm not sure that I buy that. In the 500,000, that's people tweeting, retweeting, liking, sharing in different ways, commenting. That's a lot of interaction. Look, I trend on Twitter on a regular basis. I'm trending on Twitter today, and I don't know why, Hal. And normally it's due to, a tweet that's really popular, a couple of tweets that take off, a few thousand interactions. The Trudeau Must Go campaign. I spoke to the man who said he started it. Martin Belanger. He lives, just outside of Calgary. He's a Calgary-based engineer in the oil and gas sector. He said he was just frustrated. He was, in a debate with somebody online about Trudeau's comments that people who won't get vaccinated are, anti-science, that they're often misogynist and racist. And he was translating this because he's bilingual. He's Franco-Albertan. He's translating this out of a French interview Trudeau did in the last election into English. It got him upset. And so he said he's the first one, and I haven't found any evidence to dispute this. He was the first one to post his photo, give his bio, and say that Trudeau thinks he's an extremist that must be dealt with, or words to that effect. Thousands of people have done the same thing. Not all of them are people who are unvaccinated. Many who are vaccinated said, you know what? Trudeau thinks I'm an extremist that needs to be dealt with because I disagree with them. This has taken on a life of its own. At first, the Liberals dismissed it. They laughed at it. Then they tried to claim it was bots. I think there's a lot of real life Canadians. Now, look, Twitter has a minority of the Canadian population on it. It skews towards rabid partisanship. But I think, you combine that, you combine the polls, Trudeau's approval rating, all of these things point to a groundswell of discontent with the public. You look at the outrage over him singing. That wouldn't have happened 5, 6, 7 years ago, but it's happening now. So things have changed, and I'm not sure that the Liberals fully get that.
Brian, we only have about a minute left here, but I want to talk about our Prime Minister at the UN General Assembly meeting. One of the issues Trudeau is expected to discuss at the UN is food security. Canadian grain production is up by quite a bit this year, which is vital given the war in Ukraine. Are the Trudeau Liberals still moving ahead with plans to reduce fertilizer emissions and therefore fertilizer use, such as nitrogen?
Yeah, no, they still are. And so it's a bit rich for the prime minister to go to the UN General Assembly and talk about food security. Wheat production is up about 55%. That's the expectation this year. It's been a great year. Last year was not a great year for Western producers. This year is. Canola production is up about 38%. This is important when we've got so many other areas that are producing not having good years. For Canada to be there, that's vital for food security. What is detrimental to food security is saying that due to climate change targets, we're going to require or push for a reduction in fertilizer nitrogen emissions. And every farmer and farm group I talk to says that means a reduction in fertilizer use, which means a reduction in crop output, less food, higher cost for you, less food security. The PM needs to rethink this path that he's on.
Political reporter and Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilley, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, Hal.